Ladies and gentlemen, we are now live.
Good evening, Silverton. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. It's June 14th and this time is 7:02 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Deputy Clerk, roll call, please.
Trustee Barella.
Here.
Trustee Harper.
Here.
Trustee Weger.
Here.
Trustee Yerma.
Here.
Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Mayor Furman.
Here. Due to direct and indirect threats, inappropriate comments in and out of public meetings, and the general divisiveness issues creating in our community, we will not be doing the Pledge of Allegiance during Town of Silverton Board of Trustee meetings, and it's removed from agendas and/or protocols until such time that we can discuss this at a board retreat or workshop.
We already discussed this as a board. Any other unilateral decisions we need to know about?
If you'd like to find somewhere in the code that does not permit me to do this, then I welcome that discussion at our next.
Yes, but it's just been done for a long time.
I understand.
We all took an oath. And we as a board collectively decided it would be done.
This is not up for discussion at this moment, but if you'd like to add it to the
Okay,
next
unilateral
agenda, we can do
decision.
that.
Thank you.
You are welcome. All right, any board revisions to the agenda by the staff or trustees?
Mayor Furman, I have one revision regarding the billboards.
Okay.
That could be tabled for next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to welcome our brand new town administrator, Administrator Koshberger. And would you like to introduce yourself real quick, or am I putting you on the spot?
Sure. My name is Gloria Koshberger, coming to you from Durango. Excited to be here.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll open up the meeting for public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We'll start with in-person comments, and then once we run through those, we'll turn to virtual participant comments. Looks like we do not have any in-person comments. If you're participating via Zoom, please click the raise hand button and we'll promote you to panelist. Seeing none, we will close public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have one public comment submitted in writing that Deputy Clerk Nate Baxter will read for us.
And this letter is from Gigi Rain. My name is Gigi Rain, and I'm one of the people who drew up the referendum petition. It makes me very sad that our town and this country have reached a point where people are unwilling to see the opposing viewpoint, where everything is black and white and nobody is willing to reach a compromise. In fact, it makes me very, very sad. We instigated the referendum petition because summer visitors to our town were so upset, and the businesses in our town were so full of anxiety. We saw it as a way to allow everyone to cool down, take a step back, and take this controversial topic to a vote of the town. I listened to Trustee Barney's update this morning on Facebook. I completely understand that some people in town are disappointed with this referendum, but I would like to add that an equal number of people with the opposing viewpoint were disappointed with the May 18th decision as well. I've talked to a lot of people over the past 3 weeks, and even people who oppose OHVs and will most likely vote against them in the fall felt that the trustees and mayor handled this poorly and perhaps overstepped their authority in May. I have no skin in this game. I have a brand new business that has no history with sales to OHV population before this year. I will say that in our first month of business, our larger sales have primarily been to people who are staying in town and not rushing to catch a train. But we very much appreciate the business the train offers as well. We are hoping that the trustees and our mayor will allow this referendum to stand and allow the town to speak on this OHV issue. In the meantime, we hope that the trustees and mayor will allow the OHV community to do what it was formed to do, come up with solutions to the problems we are all seeing with some in the OHV community. We also hope the trustees and our mayor will work together with the county to come up with a plan for staging and transporting OHV riders via trailer to and from the backcountry and via shuttle to and from the backcountry. It is our understanding that some town ordinances need to be rewritten to make these accommodations. No matter which way the OEC vote goes in the fall, I think we can all agree that more education and law enforcement needs to take place in staging areas and shuttle services will only help with the situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to make one comment. I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm sorry, but that's to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd note that that's out of order. And we did have a one strike policy. I'm not going to ask everyone to leave tonight, but if something like that happens again, we will.
You'll resign.
And heckling and other things like that are also out of order. So please don't ask me to make people leave. We'll now turn to agenda item 3, presentations and proclamations, alternative building materials and local source.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sean Andrietta. This was, we're going to have about probably half hour to 45 minutes on housing this evening. First, with Sean Andrietta, we'll introduce Kelly, that's on alternative materials and other building materials, and there'll be an opportunity to present those, and a Q&A with Kelly Matthews, who Sean will introduce, and then we'll go to Beth Kramer on policies. So that's where we're going. So native son, Sean Andrietta, please welcome him.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. I'm Sean Andrietta. I know some of you may not know me. I grew up here through the 70s and 80s. Had a great time. You know, the town was like 800 plus people, and it was a great community where we had basketball team, volleyball team that traveled, cross country team, and we had lots of families. You know, that's one thing that I look back on, and we had lots of families here. We had a community, and I'd like to see that again. And talking with Anthony, we're talking about housing, and housing is a major, major problem that is not. I think we're overlooking how important it is to have housing for everybody, attainable, affordable. We need to really focus on that. You know, it's easy to get distracted with things. And so one of the things that came up was talking about building materials and affordability of those materials. I was in the housing industry for about 5 years. And in those 5 years, I met Kelly Ray Matthews, who's also now a friend of mine. And he has a wealth of knowledge. And he said he'd be willing to come and share some information with you all about alternative building materials, lessons he's learned. He's also has worked with affordable housing in Durango. And so I'd like to welcome him up to the podium. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
So I have done basically I've been a builder for about 25 years, primarily with straw bale, adobe. Things that are synonymous with us are, you know, local materials, natural materials, healthy materials. That's just kind of where we start from. And I've always been looking at ways to make those materials on all housing affordable and also sustainable. And when I say sustainable, I mean a building like this that's going to be here in 100 years, not some piece of garbage that we call affordable that somebody will want to tear down and replace in 15 years. And I've seen enough times where we are able to do that, build beautiful little houses that people love and will keep up for a lot of years, to know that it's really possible. And so when we started talking about this, I've been rolling all this over in my head and thinking about what's appropriate to Silverton. And when we were talking at dinner earlier, and it came up that you guys have a mill that's opening up in town. And having a mill is a huge resource right now because, well, I'm sure everybody's familiar with what's happening to the price of materials right now. Last fall, a sheet of OSB plywood was $8. Today, I got a really good deal and it was $48. And it's probably going up from there. And so you can see a 2x4 has gone up like 170% since last year. But the materials that I buy from a local miller in Durango I had to encourage him to raise the prices. Some one buy that I priced at the store, which was $4.75-ish a board foot. I paid him less than $2 a board foot, and it's better wood. So recognizes the resources that you guys have locally and then putting those to work, I think is a really important part of thinking about. And it also, you're giving somebody in town money instead of sending it to Durango or to, the Northwest. Last couple buildings we built, we switched gears. We don't do straw bale and adobe. So, and I think that those buildings are maybe appropriate vernacular to what you guys would be looking at here. And what we did was we used all local rough cut in this building. We did a standard stick frame. So any builder could, sink his teeth into this, but you get a thicker wall. Let me back up a minute. The other reason for doing that was we see what's happening in the recycling world right now, right? It's like we're producing tons and tons of recycling and there's nowhere for it to go. And so we need to start making markets for all that recycled material. So we decided rather than focusing on so much on natural to look at where we could go with recycled materials. And so we decided to do a wall system that included a regionally produced material called cellulose that probably most of you are familiar with. It's recycled shredded paper, and it is at once very environmental. It's very economical, which I think is a big part of environmental in my thinking. And it also is very inexpensive. It's sort of has been the darling of the environmental world for a while. We put that in a full 6-inch wall. A rough cut wall has the benefit of being a full 6 inches. So you get a full 6 inches of cellulose insulation. And then we wrap that with another recycled material that comes out of Canada, which is a recycled wood product. And the benefit of that product is where a lot of houses have a blue foam wrap, you replace it with a recycled wood product, which then replaces that $48 piece of OSB with a $40 recycled piece of wood fiber that also, give me just 1 second, let me finish my thought, also replaces that foam and also replaces the OSB. And you'll also eliminate one entire process in the building. Yes, ma'am.
So this cellulose, does it sink like old insulation when you used to spray it in?
If it's not properly installed, yes. But if somebody is actually doing it correctly, and we actually use a process called wet blown, and which would be appropriate for you in the summer and not appropriate in the winter because of long drying times. But when it's wet blown in like that, it will not pack down. If you put it in, and if somebody is a conscientious installer and they do a full on dense pack, then it will not settle. But yeah, that is definitely a concern and something to be aware of. And so this is kind of the direction I've gone in terms of a building. In fact, I just built my own house this way. And I think another very important part in thinking about building houses is, well, I hit it on a little bit, and that is that you actually want to build a really quality house. You want to build something that you feel good about building, that people feel good about moving into, something that is lovely, because part of sustainable is beautiful and durable. Because if it is beautiful, then it will be durable. People will take care of it. And so building quality into it. There are really, really, really simple things that you can do to make a house affordable, and that goes beyond the cost of what it costs to turn the key. And that is what those utilities cost, what the maintenance is down the line. And in Silverton, that's a big deal. I was involved with an outfit that was building affordable housing in Moab, and obviously a much different environment. Their issue is heat. So, but their idea was, let's use the USDA low cost loans to replace really high utility bills. And so they started replacing trailers with straw bale houses. And that was a great program, and it's still going on. They use volunteer labor to build 2 houses every 4 months. And so that's a model you can look at. There's some trickiness that a municipality might not want to take on, but this was done by a nonprofit. Really simple things like taking into the idea of passive solar, proper orientation of house, proper eave links, right amount of glass in the right places. It costs nothing or almost nothing. And you can, in Durango, my house, I heat about 75% with strictly passive solar. No PV, no hot water, just sun coming in the windows at the right time of year and keeping it out during the summer season. I was talking to somebody at dinner tonight, and they were saying that they have a huge problem with overheating in their house in Silverton. That's crazy. That should not happen. When you go in my house right now, it's like if I'm sitting at the desk for too long, I have to walk outside to warm up. It's that cool. And I don't have any active cooling at all. The idea that somebody would have to cool their house in Silverton is just beyond me. In Moab, we built houses that didn't need cooling. So have I eaten up my time? I could blab on forever. I'd like to open up questions if anybody has them. I would also like to say I can talk about this stuff a lot. I've got a ton of experience with this, and I'm happy to talk. I'm a true believer in making housing affordable for people and really sweet housing. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I'll leave my number, and please feel free. I'll give it to Anthony. Please feel free to call me on a personal basis, and I'll talk to your Blue about it. I would love to see you guys do something like this in Silverton. I think it's really needed. I think you have the opportunity this town has a lot of potential, One other thing I'd like to mention is space efficiency. I'm a builder, and every time I build my own house, it gets smaller. I just built my dream house, and it's 930 square feet. And most people don't know how small it is when they walk into it, because if you're thinking about how houses really work and you think about design and you implement those things, you can make really functional spaces out of small spaces. And I think that's a really critical thing when you're thinking about affordable housing, because obviously materials and labor are a big part of that. So I'll finish. Go ahead.
You said eave length. Kind of explain what you meant by that, your overhang, your eave.
So depending on where you're at in the world, the sun comes in, so in the wintertime, I want my sun to come in like this. I want it to reach back as far as I can into the house. And then in the summertime, I want it to be out here, right? And so in Durango, and probably here it would be the same. I might go with a little shorter eaves in here, just given that you need more heating, but probably a 30-inch eave, say. And so you are going to look at that relationship of where the top of your window is and where that eave is, and then try to make it so that somewhere around, probably here, maybe around May, you start to get no more sun coming in that window, so that you don't have an overheating problem. But then all winter long, that sun is coming in, and preferably you have some amount of mass in the house, like a concrete floor or tile floor, something that's going to absorb that heat. We do a lot of work with plasters, being straw bale guys. We know a lot about plaster. And so we incorporate a lot of plaster in our houses too. And that also adds mass, but then holds that heat overnight and slows down that big swing. The difference between my house and a trailer house is a great example. I used to live in a single wide trailer. And in the winter, I'd come home and that sucker would be hot as the devil. But as soon as it got dark, it would start to get cold and we have to heat it. Whereas in the house that I have now, because it has it's like a big rock. You walk out in the mountains in the winter or in the summertime, maybe you get a little chilly, but you lay down on a rock and you're warm, right? And it's just from that mass. The air temperature hasn't changed. It's just that contact with that mass makes you warm. And that's kind of the concept that we use in building the houses. And I think it's a great model for affordable housing because you can lower the heating and cooling bills. Any other questions? Did I answer your question?
Yes, very much so. The one other thing, oh, go ahead, Tyler.
I was just going to ask if you'd ever built these houses in sort of higher volumes, and if so, using these local
No, I haven't.
bills, what kind of savings we might be able to see? Because I know
I have not built them in higher volumes. Right now in the material costs, I couldn't even guess at, but I know it would be significant. And that depends on your local mill and everything. But, right now I'm paying a tiny fraction. I'm paying 25% less than I would be paying for, especially on the rough side, on the framing side, than I would be if I was going to the grocery store and buying it at Home Depot or one of the lumber yards. So, yeah, it's especially right now, I think that, and I don't know what's going to happen to material costs, but probably going to stay high.
Snow load, first off, and secondly, what do you do to the exterior? Because you're talking a lot about plastering, and I get the whole concept. I think it's a wonderful way to go. But what do you do with the exterior to make it a little bit more, because we were a historic mining community and so on. So we've got kind of an Edwardian, Victorian sort of feel.
And you have lime mortars and brick all over town. And we do a lot of lime, and I probably wouldn't do a clay plaster here. You probably can situationally. That's the idea of the big eave, is it protects your windows. It protects your foundation. It protects your walls. And so, I assume all of us are at least familiar with, with the ruins out in Southeast Utah. I've seen 900-year-old plaster there with babies' footprints in it. If it's well protected, it'll last forever. And so that is, again, situationally, you can use clay plasters, but I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't use. I wouldn't use the elastomeric plasters or any of that kind of stuff in this environment, but you can use a lime or even a more traditional cement lime plaster here and work fine. I think that's another thing worth taking into account. Anthony asked about building things like straw bales in this environment because we're higher. They build straw bales in the Olympic Peninsula, on the coast, on the East Coast where they have driving rain. Straw is cellulose material, same as wood. It starts to rot at 18%. So both of those materials have to be protected. Main thing that we've gotten really good at in modern construction is really sealing houses up. And this is kind of where things like blue foam and modern house wraps and some of that stuff come in. And we've made them so tight that we've created all these mold issues in houses. And I think we're finally starting to wise up the fact that a house needs to have vapor permeability. Buildings, especially in a place like Silverton, need to be able to move vapor, not just through a $30 fan that circulates air, but also through its walls. And so using slightly more expensive, but much more effective house wraps, and using something like the wood fiber board versus a foam. I mean, we all all had our mothers that told us not to put a plastic bag over our head and seal it up, right? I mean, that's effectively what we're doing on our houses, is we're sealing them up so tight that we can't breathe. And so, paying attention to those things like not doing an elastomeric plaster, which is a very complete sealant, versus something like lime cement, which allows vapor to move the building and adds mass and, makes it better functioning house.
I'm wondering, kind of along the lines of what Trustee George was asking about in terms of just like municipal project.
Yeah.
But
And I've been thinking about that, believe me. And that's why I think that,
like, is there a plan, or is there something that can be replicated efficiently
Yes.
that can scale up?
yep. Yeah, and most of the plans that I've worked with have been small, they've been single story. And I think given you guys limit to footprint, I think double two-story is kind of a no-brainer here. But yeah, and it, again, to me, that, and I haven't really talked about simplicity, but simplicity is also part of that environmental, economic piece, simple buildings built beautiful. When you don't spend money on architecture, you save money for finishes and high quality doors and windows and stuff like that. So that the designs are pretty simple. I can tell you what a design might look like out of my head right now. You're going to have your living room, kitchen, dining on the south side where you have all that light coming in. You're going to have things like bathrooms and bedrooms on a north side where they don't really require that, that nice sunny space and all that heat. And then you have more bedrooms and baths upstairs and possibly communal spaces. So, I mean, that's most of the houses that I built and almost all of the economic houses that I built kind of look like that in that picture. And a lot of times we try to avoid two-story if you can, because stairs eat up a lot of space and they take a lot of time and they require a lot of work. And so, but I think here you can make an argument for two-story for sure. So, but yes, and that's part of that municipal piece is part of why I'm thinking not straw bale, not adobe, not straw clay, but something that any, I'll just say, jabroni builder can sink his teeth into. Oh yeah, I know how to frame. This is a little different wood, but yeah, it's kind of neat. Most builders, once they do it, they're like, oh wow, this thing is stout. This is kind of cool building out a roof. And instead of smelling like glue when you cut a board, it smells like Christmas. It's pretty sweet. So. And you support people in town, and those people then can afford to buy housing and. So anyway, like I said, I can blab on forever.
Question was asked about snow load.
Yeah, that's just a matter of engineering, and just plussing up. We were talking earlier about stamped material versus non-stamped when it comes to rough cut. When I first started 25 years ago in Durango, there was a big fuss about everything had to be stamped, which was a pain in the ass because they had to come all the way from Colorado Springs to stamp it. We had to pay the guy a couple $100 every time we built a building to stamp it. But nobody said anything about stamping anything to me in 15 years. Because I think every inspector that's ever come on my job has looked at it and said, holy God, that's a lot of wood. It's 30% more wood than is in a piece of kiln dried that you get at Home Depot. And so, but I think if you were doing, big, expansive rafters in Silverton and maybe a low roof pitch, I'd get it stamped and I'd have it engineered. But that's pretty easy engineering.
And then floor systems, talking about a two-story structure would just be dimensional lumber as well.
Probably, yeah. You might have to, depending on spans, you might have to step up and do something engineered. But in my thinking, and it depends on price right now, again, the argument could be made easily that I would just double up on 2x10s and skip the engineered, floor joist systems because they're really, really expensive right now.
Something else really quick. Do you have any pictures of anything that you built that you could submit?
Oh, God, no. I used to be a photographer. Why would I have that? I don't have a website or pictures or anything. If anybody was interested in looking at examples of buildings that we've built using some of these techniques, they certainly could. If you're in Durango, I'd be happy to show it.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Really appreciate you coming.
you for your time. Thanks for
Much.
considering doing this.
No.
Panelists.
So we're moving on to our next agenda item, housing policy. Welcome, Beth Kremer.
Beth, you are now a co-host, so you should be able to screen share as well.
Okay. All right. It's great. Sorry, it's saying it's loading on my side, so. Give me 1 second. What does that say over there?
Screen share.
Okay, great. All right, trustees, thank you so much.
We'll just wait a second.
Sorry. Thought you were gonna still-
That's okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you for having me tonight, trustees. For those that are not familiar with San Juan Development Association, we work on not only economic diversification and resiliency in Silverton and San Juan County, but also aligned with community priority projects, which workforce housing seems to be at a forefront of our community, and I appreciate your time with me today. What I'll be going through is the strategies in order to tackle workforce housing. What I've been doing is doing research, interviewing elected officials, experienced professionals, and really getting engaged with the community to see what are the different aspects that we have as a whole and what would potentially work in Silverton. The original ask was any and all options, so that is what I'm presenting with you today. But also I'll indicate the areas that I think could be good wins for Silverton initially, as well as stuff that could be localized for us. So first, before we begin, I want to define what workforce housing is, because it seems to be a definition that a lot of people are not exactly sure what it means. But really, it's the housing affordable to incomes earning between 60 to 100% of area median income. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay. And really, workforce housing is for our workforce. So we're looking at providing housing for those in middle income workers, such as police officers, firefighters. Are you doing something? What's that? Okay. Firefighters, teachers, healthcare, et cetera. And really, when we come down to it, there's 4 main buckets of strategies that you can tackle workforce housing on: policy and management, planning and land use, dedicated fundings, and capacity buildings. Each of these strategies encompass subgroups, and those are what I'll go for in more detail. I'll also try to provide local best case scenarios and best practices that we've seen within our region and neighboring communities of things that have worked for them in the past that hopefully could work for Silverton as well. And to start off, we'll do policy management. And really, the first step is, in order to do this, is to create a comprehensive workforce housing policy. And that includes different policy examples like inclusionary zoning, upzoning, density bonusing, housing preservation, et cetera. So these are a lot of definitions, and I should have referred you guys in the beginning. In the Google documents, I have created a white paper with really detailed analysis of this and examples and definitions, so you can go through at your own preview. But what this includes is starting off with a housing study and then a housing feasibility assessment. So that really gives you what your community is able to support, and then where your community can support that. San Juan Development is actually sponsoring a housing study with preliminary findings right now, available in July. This is through the donations from the Southwest Council of Government and through the Southwest Council of Government with Root Policy, which is the research group conducting this survey. Some examples that I think that would work in Silverton are upzoning, so increasing your density ratios in different areas, housing preservations, which allows to make sure that housing that is already on the market for workforce housing does not go away. Single or fast track permitting processes. A good example of this is Steamboat Springs incorporated this into their workforce comprehensive plan, where anyone doing a workforce housing development automatically went to the front of the queue when doing any permitting or a development enforcement. The second part of this, of policy management, is to actually create a delivery system with performance checks. So this is basically the engine in order to make sure that your comprehensive plan is moving forward. The idea of performance checks is to make sure that you're reaching your deliverables. So we have some of those delivery systems could be housing authorities, they could be community task force groups, they could be, subsegments of local government. Performance checks would include numbers of workforce houses created per year, number of residents in workforce housing, number of residents that participate in these types of public meetings or, I'm so sorry, I don't know what is happening here. Number of residents that are participating in these public meetings and initiatives. So moving on from planning and policy and management, we go into planning and land use. So the first part of this strategy is to create land use and zoning codes to incentivize developers and owners. So examples of this, I'm just going to do this. Okay. Examples of this is to invest in infrastructure, waiver building permits or sewer fees, expand multifamily residential districts. Talk about your opportunity tone tax incentives, which we have here in Silverton. An example of the infrastructure investments that really worked was Durango. The city of Durango recently invested in a water and sewer analysis for a part of the town south of the city that they wanted to create economic diversity or bring in businesses and also workforce housing. But developers were nervous about buying property there because there was no water and sewer. So the city of Durango actually helped investment in that analysis. So they were able to give developers basically a toolkit for how they could develop their land.
Would you mind stopping screen share and restarting it?
Do you think that's it? This place is haunted, right? Let's see the ghosts. Another one is workforce housing preservation cash incentives. So we talked about, making a program to really incentivize people using the units that they already have. An example is that Breckenridge created a policy that paid homeowners who put deed restrictions on either new or existing properties for workforce housing at a percentage of the fair market value. And they've seen an increase of deed restricted houses because of that. The next is to really encourage the different programs and land.
Super quick question. Do you happen to know where those funds came from that they used to pay the homeowners?
I believe, I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe it's in my notes and I can get back to you on that one.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the next is really to encourage the diversification of workforce housing and land use programs. So there's different programs that you can use, including ground leases, community land trusts, or development corporations that alternate who or change who the owner of a land versus houses. So for a community land trust, this is really a local group or a nonprofit that would own the land and reduces the price of housing, where people own the buildings or houses on the land, but they're able to secure their ability to maintain that preservation of the land for that code while keeping prices low because they're not having to buy the land outright. The next part is ensuring no net loss of existing rental housing properties. So this is through deed restrictions, covenants, rental code enforcements, and rehabilitation tools. So those last two are really to make sure that those on the workforce housing market that we have right now, we don't lose them because maybe people can't live in them anymore because they've gone past the enforcement. Also implementing renter termination notices or right of refusal laws. So these look different from local government to local government, but really give the power to the renter to have that notice in order to find different housing, or in such of the right of refusal law, give the renter or the group of renters opportunity to buy the building or the property that is being sold that they live in at that time at the same price that the other person is buying. So it really gives them a chance as a group to buy the property before it goes to an outside buyer.
Can you clarify what you mean by at the same price as?
Yes, so if you have an apartment complex that you put up for sale and a third party outside buyer wants to buy it, this gives the renters of that property the ability to group together and buy it first at the same price before going to that outside buyer. Durango
Does that
actually,
work for homes, in single family homes, or only in an apartment scenario?
that could work for single family homes as well if the person is renting. Again, this type of law is really dependent on how exactly they want to word it with each government. But I can definitely bring up some examples and share them.
And one other question on that. When you refer to a law about that, a law like that because we don't pass laws. Where does the law come from? Who's passing the law?
I guess that would just be dependent on, policy, like an ordinance or a policy that you'd implement. But I guess you'd have to talk to your town attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, or whoever that is.
Yeah, similar question is, would that be something that becomes a zoning restriction where like any house or apartment in a certain zone would be required to have a right of first refusal to the tenant if rented and later sold?
Yeah, it probably would be implemented into your zoning. Again, I'll get back to you exactly on on the specifics that these towns implement, as it does vary from place to place.
Thank you.
That would be great.
So moving on to the third strategy, which is around dedicated funding. So dedicated funding is really important in order to maintain momentum and give success to the programs and policies that you're putting in place. These are some common examples where towns and cities pull funding from, and they would just need to be reviewed on what would work for Silverton specifically. But with dedicated funding, though, a lot of success comes with leveraging those funds with federal, state, and local public funds. So USDA was brought up earlier as a federal resource for grants. We also have a lot of grants in Colorado, such as HOME, HDLP, all these other ones that you're able to apply for assistance in either land acquisition or development or some sort of subsidized funding as you build these units. I do want to call out there are 2 bills currently going through the Colorado Senate at this time around workforce housing. The first is a $15 million grant looking at rehabilitation for units that can no longer be used for housing or other sorts in order to make them viable for workforce housing. And the other one is a $13 million grant that will be used with DOLA in order to help with matching funds for development and land acquisition. So they're currently going through and we'll hopefully have answers on that this fall. Last is that a lot of focus of fundings for success examples have been on the purchase of land or buildings, the rehabilitation or rental activities. So to make sure these funds are going to their maximum potential, it's suggested not to be putting on first-time home buyer programs to subsidize their payments, but really on the piece that is needed for workforce housing. And then there's also great examples of different programs where people have acquired land. So the town of Bayfield has recently acquired 30 developments where they'll put duplexes on. And so those are really going to be forced for, they'll be area income restricted, deed restricted, and for their local community because they're seeing that some of their business owners are leaving Bayfield because they don't have a place for their local workforce. Another example is a town in Nevada, a rural town in Nevada was able to work with the BLM in acquiring some of their land at 95% discount rate in order to create workforce housing on. So there's a lot of different opportunities that you can do moving forward. And finally, last is the capacity building.
Oh, sorry, one more question on funding. Is this an appropriate time to ask you this, or do you want me to save it?
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to imagine a scenario where we have like a private individual who applies for like a federal USDA grant to help them build the actual physical home, and then receives like a land from the town. Like, are partnerships like this happening where, you know, you kind of referred to it earlier about like you own the home, but then there's the land in the land trust, or like other scenarios where maybe there's a landowner who owns the property, but needs help with the structure. Like, is that what this funding is sort of referring to, is these like mishmashed, or not mishmash, but like a variety of sources that sort of piece together to support individual homeowners? Or is this more in terms of like big builds that the town spearheads and then works with individual owners once we have the whole thing kind of set up?
So the answer is both.
Okay.
Because all the grants, especially with Colorado, are focused on different like end goals,
Like
right?
phase two.
Yeah, exactly. Because workforce housing isn't just a clear pathway. So many people need assistance on that. So there are some that help support, local and private persons to build their house. There's also a lot of, agencies in Colorado, like the Colorado Housing and Financial Authority, that really kind of focuses their efforts on creating those ways for people to become economically able to afford either purchasing or building a land. So some of the grants would be through that. A lot of kind of what I was talking to about was though like larger, and not, I mean, larger doesn't have to be, you know, very large, but, you know, more wholesome acquisitions for, you know, multiple families maybe, or multiple buildings to be put on. Mayor Furman, did you have a question?
Oh, thank you.
And last is capacity building. Here. Sorry, my computer is not liking this Zoom. Nathan, you may have to take over. Okay, so for capacity building, we're going to be looking at really those partnerships. And partnerships can look in a variety of different ways between private and public development. There's private equity groups that are also interested in supporting local communities in order to support them moving forward with their. I'm sorry, Nathan, my computer is crashing.
That's absolutely fine. Can you?
Oh. On the Google Docs? And one coordinator. And then the presentation, the bottom one.
Share this.
I'll just have you go because my computer is just not good.
Okay.
I got a quick question while he's switching things over. Are there any communities that have found ways to fund these sorts of projects on their own? You talked a lot about grants, but there's also a lot of other towns kind of in the same problem that we have. So there's probably a lot of competition for those grants.
Yeah, so the slide on the sourcing, so there's home bonds, trusts, some go through taxing of different portions, you know, through vacation rentals or through, you know, visitor sales tax or something like that. So a lot of them is really a combination of different entities because it's so complex, because the projects can be very expensive, that I don't know of one town that's just fully supported it by themselves. Great. And can you just go on? Okay, could you go back one? Sorry, one more. I do want to note about the private-public housing partnerships. We do have some that are working here in Anvil. So I've talked with 9318 Construction and Nico Foster. They are great examples of local groups that are providing this work in Anvil and supporting the county and working and developing these medium and market rate housing over there. Could you go to the next one? The next is support employer assisted housing program. So this is another partnership that really looks at that government and employer partnership in order to, you know, help provide incentives for employers, but also give them the assistance that they need in order to take on these programs by themselves. So a good example is there's a company that has been doing a couple of these projects in Colorado, in Steamboat in Glenwood Springs, and now they're looking at doing it in Durango, where they are have a development where they are going to different major employers of Durango and asking them for commitment to a set number of apartments to help have that consistency with payments and rentals, but also those employers will have places for their house or for their workforce after it's built.
So what do we, okay, so I think these ideas are absolutely spectacular. Especially using some alternative building methods. We could really go somewhere with all of this. But what do we do with the fact that we have such a massive transient, not a bad thing, but we have the winter versus the summer. So in the summertime, a lot of the employers need, 10 units, but in the wintertime, they need 2. So how, that's the disparity here between our seasons. Have you looked into that at all?
So my suggestion is that would be based on probably a 6-month rental agreement with, the employers. And that could be dependent on, who needs houses for the most in the summer. And then maybe in the winter, that 6-month agreement shifts for those that need housing in the winter time.
Thank you.
Okay, next one. And the last one is to support alternative building designs and materials. So we just heard a great presentation about some options that are local, but there are some options that have been successful in other communities. Aspen and Salida have both put in tiny home communities with such success that they are doubling almost every couple of years. It's pretty incredible how many people find that it is something that they'd like to do. And the city was able to make it work within their community and zoning. Multi-purpose buildings. So these are some areas where in Ridgeway, they built a rec center, and on top of the rec center, they put workforce housing apartments in order to supplement that rec center, but also provide additional housing to their workforce. Modular homes are becoming an easy way to also save money and also deal with the small building season that we have here in Silverton. There's a local modular home company in Buena Vista that has actually partnered with a lot of different towns and cities in Colorado already. And he will customize tiny modular homes in whichever way they want and then build them for the community and have them shipped out. You could go to the next one. Thank you. So I know I just walked you through like a really simple pathway. Hopefully you thought it was simple, but it's really not simple. Workforce housing is complex. And even though it seems like you do one step and then the next one, they really do build on each other. And you have to go through and have a massive multifaceted solution that you continually evaluate and review in order to make it successful. I'm gonna go to the next one. These are all the ones that I did put an asterisk next to. These are the ones that I think could be easy wins or good starts to create our momentum here in our community for workforce housing underneath the different strategy that they would fall under. Next one. And I just want to say that with San Juan Development, we're really here for our community priority projects. And I myself am really looking forward to working on this project and I'm open to any questions or further discussions that you have or any deep dives of anything that I presented here today. Do you have any questions?
I think this was an awesome foundational presentation to start us all on the same page. And I'm curious to what extent San Juan Development has capacity and time to further develop some of these ideas to kind of narrow the blinders a little bit. There's so much there. I could see us spending years kind of researching each one. So is there the opportunity for San Juan Development to help put forth maybe 2 or 3 of the highest likelihood policies or ideas that we could consider further?
I think there absolutely is, and working together would be good. I think I would need the direction of the town and the trustees to know which ones that you also would like to have more information on or you think is viable, because obviously you all have a different perspective and represent a different part of the community here. But I think it is important that, already out of that list, I've identified a sub list that could be worked on. And maybe we start at some place and start tackling it together.
Awesome. As a follow-up, I guess I'd request that we schedule a work session between San Juan Development and the board to brainstorm where to direct our focus. If that works for the rest of the board and Administrator Koschberger.
Yes. Yeah, I think that would be great for us. And I'm also kind of wondering, I've just been thinking a lot about immediate problems for people in the community that are like, I have to figure this out in the next 30 days. And I know that that's like not enough time to build a house or apply for a grant or really do any of this, but I'm also wondering if there's a way for us to create some kind of like some sessions where community members are able to attend and just understand like what's out there for them. Like, is there a grant for them to apply for? Like, I have this property, but I don't know how to build a house myself, or, you know, just like trying to create some connections for community members that may come with some capacity, but not all of the capacity that they need to actually get into their house.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to start that off is that having community involvement in whatever level is an absolute necessity. So having them involved in the discussion and knowing what stuff is out there for sure. There are a lot of organizations that I can begin to connect people with. So, I mean, I would definitely encourage people to reach out to San Juan Development, and we can definitely hold, you know, how to navigate 101 if you see that is something that the community would want to do as well.
Quick question. The AMI is part of the problem right now with the availability. The county has some availability, but the AMI threshold is low. Do we have any room to play with that if we were to set up our own housing authority and make that threshold higher? Because that is a big issue, because there are vacancies and there's not anyone to fill them because the threshold is in that super low end.
Yeah, so from my knowledge, the county is restricted because of the grant requirements. So it would depend on if we use grants, what those requirements were. Implementing new deed restrictions or incentives for those. A lot of those deed restrictions are just as they have to be a full-time resident of Silverton or San Juan County, or they have to be a full-time worker within the community. So that is an idea of like deed restrictions that aren't connected to AMI, but still keep housing preservation inside the community. Anvil has some of that too on the north end. Those are market rate, so they're not AMI restricted, but they are all called for, as I believe right now. So there's a lot of different restrictions that you can put on housing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks. Over to you.
All right. We have a finance report here. You all have the letter in your packet from, yes, just say John Ryder. And Anthony, do you have anything to add on the finance report?
Unless there's a question.
Yeah. We're here to answer any questions.
Me?
Yes.
We had an email this week from a citizen asking about the number 2, the $45,000 positive in the Kendall master planning expense. And that is,
Excuse me, would you mind not talking in the back? Sorry, thank you.
that's a grant that Lisa Branner got for the planning, and I just wonder if we can get back to that citizen and with an indication of like, if there are restrictions on how that money is spent or what that money can go towards.
yeah, I don't see why we couldn't get back to them on that. So
Okay, I
I'd be
think
happy
there are
to.
some suggestions in it, and I'm not sure, if it would be nice to do the things that were in that email, but I'm not sure if that money is available in those ways.
Okay,
But if so, it would be nice to look into it.
okay, we'll look into that.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the finance?
Want to bring something to attention. Rose Rabbit talked at the last meeting and we've been putting the county tax figures in. That's the figures that you see year over year or month over month and that are comparable for year over year. There used to be, and it hasn't been presented in a while, a document that also includes what we receive directly and it broken down. To give you an idea, it's around 18 to 20% more is what we're actually getting on those months. So it shows, I can't remember what this month showed. It would be 40,000. It would potentially be another 9,000 for 49. I think Rose had a good point she brought to our attention this last week. We should bring that document back. People can see what the full amount we're receiving each month, not just what we're receiving from the county. So we're going to work on that.
Any other questions?
All right, the next agenda item is new business, consideration to increase the town credit card limit and to get departments a separate card.
I'll have Nathan speak to this one.
So I've been working with Kelly on this just on the side. We do have a cash flow issue with town to where we have one credit card here in town. Public Works has a credit card. The current limit of $10,000 has proven over the past couple of months to be an issue because it's only being paid once per month. And if Director Todd Bove orders picnic tables for Moelis, then there's not enough left in the budget to purchase a Zoom room system. Anything over $5,000 comes to the board for approval. However, it's those smaller amounts that help with day-to-day operations that is starting to clog up the finances to where we have to wait certain periods. That's why we're currently using the OWL system from the county. We're waiting for that bill to be paid. So we are requesting that each department get their own credit card and their own limit. That way it helps track the financials better as well.
Is there a specific limit being requested in the aggregate or for each department?
I believe the limit was $25,000, which would keep us within $5,000 each, but for the town credit card and the Public Works, that would absolutely help. If we are able to get cards for each department, Public Works, as well as Parks and Recs, Community Relations, and town administration for that $25,000 each. I think that would cover everything without going overboard.
And does each department have a threshold below $5,000 for which other approvals are required, or is there any number that requires like a second sign off?
Currently, $5,000 is what the board approved previously. That is policy. If that would like to be changed, absolutely, but that would also clog up more Parks and Recs stuff as well.
My question was more, so 5,000 over comes to the board, but is there a lower threshold where, you know, if one department wants to spend $2,500, does that go to administrator sign off, or do they have full discretion to spend up to $4,999?
Currently with communication within town hall, it does go up to the administrator regardless. I believe she is made aware of.
Yes, and this is something I would like to address in future meetings as a purchasing policy. So I would recommend that we look into a purchasing policy in the future, but I think that this would help immediate needs.
So it's the recommendation to increase the current credit card limit of 10,000 to 25,000 and to issue each department head a credit card prior to adopting a purchasing policy.
That's the way I understand it, yes.
And are you supportive?
Yes, I do. I would recommend it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
We went from a $500, okay, put that into perspective, $500 department without a board approval to 5,000. So that was a big leap of faith with taxpayers' dollars, that things are not getting abused. So I really would like to see the policy just to make sure, because I'm not saying that anybody is abusing this in any way, shape, or form, but we are all beholden to the taxpayers, because this is not our money, it's theirs. And we need to have necessity, I guess, attached to large purchases. And we felt the last time that increased from 500, because 500, was maybe okay in the 80s, probably the last time it was really looked at, to 5,000. But I think, I don't mind increasing the threshold for the limit, but I think approval still needs to be in place. We need all those measures to make sure that these are valid purchases and transfers.
Is there a dollar amount you think that would be good for internal approvals below 5,000?
I think it depends on the projects. Everything has a different monetary value depending on what it's attached to. Like he was talking about for Parks and Rec, that was the purchasing of all of the supplies that were needed to get everything going for Kendall Mountain Ski Area. So I think the discretion should really lie with the administrator, because that's where, and anything over 5,000 still comes back to the board. So we keep that discretionary spending within the $25,000 limit. Department heads get credit cards, but at the same time, we need to make sure that anything over, I don't know, anything over, I would say 2,500, about 50% of that is approved by the administrator to make sure that these purchases are really viable, necessary. How often are we going to be doing a Zoom room again? Hopefully never. So some of the purchase of equipment was done out of necessity for COVID, but we also received COVID money with these purchases. So fiscal responsibility should be all of our goal. That's what I have to say about that. I would guess, I wouldn't say more than 2,500 without administrator's approval.
Are you asking?
Anything over 5,000 should come to the board as per ordinance.
And Trustee Perrella, are you asking for a purchasing policy to be made first before this is implemented?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just think it's a better fail safe than just saying, okay, here you go. Now we got 25 grand, go spend it and rack it up. And then all of a sudden those checks that we're signing grow and grow without us as a board or you necessarily having the knowledge, and you can't answer the questions. When I say, well, wait a minute, why am I signing a check for, $24,000 for Visa, and the attachments are just too many to even decipher during a meeting. So I think the policy should be in place first. But I think it's an excellent idea because it does give the ability for them to do what they need when they need it, but with approval.
Okay, I would be happy. Oh, go ahead.
Would it make sense to go ahead with the increased limit, but not the issuing of department head credit cards until the policy is in place? Because then it would still
I
be
think
functional.
that's an excellent idea.
Okay. Any concerns or objections?
At this time, I think that would work out very well. Increase the limit. That way we can continue business, get that purchasing policy in place, and I believe it's.
Do we need a motion in order to increase the limit? I believe we do. So do I hear a motion to increase the limit from $10,000 to $25,000, but not to issue additional credit cards to department heads until such time that a purchasing policy is adopted?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Weger,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. All right, our next item is consideration to let the area for aging use their grant money to make improvements to the modular unit.
And I do have Director Bove online if he wants to speak to this, but I will introduce it. As much as my knowledge is right now of this topic, but it basically has been suggested that we use the red modular for the sorry.
Seniors.
Yes, for a senior center. And how we can do that is with this grant. So it's currently not ADA compliant. But Bo, would you like to talk about this? Can you ask him to unmute?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm stumbling.
So I think most of the trustees are aware of the use of the red modular as a food bank this winter. It was very successful. We were very pleased to utilize the space. That being said, there is another side to that modular. Its original intended use was to be used as a temporary library while we completed rehabilitation on the Carnegie Library. That mainly due to a lack of funding, the casinos being closed during COVID has kind of been deferred a year with State Historic Fund, a year before we can apply. So it would be September of 2022. That would be, we'd be able to apply and then for a spring award of that grant. Carrie Metzler approached me and inquired about that being used in the interim as a senior center. My really only reluctancy was our potential need down the road to utilize that space for a temporary library. But under the circumstances, I think this is a great use of the space. We've discussed the senior center in the facilities department for probably over 3 years, if not longer and before my time. So the recommendation of staff would be, sorry, to give you a little more context, Public Health was awarded a grant. They have $10,000 remaining to be spent prior to the end of this month. So they're kind of looking for a quick project. Senior Center falls into the approved uses of the grant. So we, excuse me, we kind of just brainstormed and thought that this was a great way for the town to get the some improvements it needs so that public access would be allowed into the building, ADA access, railings, ramps, decks. And in exchange for that, it could be operated as a senior center for the next 18 months, free of charge, included with utilities, kind of in exchange for the work that would be done to a town facility. Like I said, I think this is a wonderful use of the space in the interim as we kind of sort through what's going on with the Carnegie Library and continue to be awarded funding for that project. And then after the 18 months, we can kind of say, okay, are we in a position where we need to find a different accommodation for the senior center? Are we still trying to receive grant funding for the Carnegie Library? That 18 months is a pretty safe bet that we're not going to begin construction on the library. So I'm comfortable with that time frame and kind of coming back to the table after that 18 months and either setting up a situation where the senior center pays rent or they're afforded the space free of charge by vote of the trustees, or we find an alternate accommodation for the senior center. But I think this is a great short-term solution, and I'm not sure if Carrie Metzler is online or in the crowd, but she could probably give you a little more information about the grant itself. So if this is approved by the board, Carrie and I are going to meet as soon as possible and try and spend that $10,000 just getting the supplies here. So buying concrete, buying wood, and getting the supplies here for ultimately construction throughout the summer, when we can carve out the time to do it. But that doesn't mean we can't expend those funds on materials in the meantime. And I'd be happy to field any questions.
Thank you. Carrie, would you like to say anything?
Well, does anybody have any questions on any of this? When my supervisor down in Durango approached me and said that there was a lot of money coming down the pipe for next fiscal year, she asked if there was anything that I thought that Silverton could use for the folks that are 60 years and older. And I said a senior center, and she said she thought that was a good idea. Well, then a month or so later, her funding supplier told her that the money wasn't going to come, that they weren't going to be able to help, but she thought it was important enough that she figured out a way to get $12,000 out of this fiscal year. It'll be $10,000 for the building, ramp, railing and all of that, and then $2,000 to spend on tables, chairs, and TV, that kind of stuff for the seniors. It would be a good place for if we have an emergency or a disaster where people can congregate to, if they need a ride out of town or that kind of stuff, just a good place to get information out to our senior population. As of the last voter registration rolls, over a third of our population is 60+ years old. A lot of them live alone. I think this would be a good place and a good use of that modular. And in 18 months, we can renegotiate, maybe even form a 501c3 or something at that point. And this would let us know whether we really do need a senior center here in Silverton. We can have a sign-up sheet. I can keep tally marks and all of that kind of stuff. I have a lot of people that have volunteered to host different activities during the week, once or twice a month. So I think with a little bit of just some ingenuity that we can figure something out with this. Any questions? Go ahead.
I had a question. I don't know if it's maybe for Todd or for Director Seitz, but will the town staff have enough time to make sure that we can do all the ADA stuff to make sure that we can get it done in a timely fashion so we can?
Well, when I talked to Todd about, he had concerns about that, and I said we could go ahead. I think at some point in the past that there's been conversation about how much concrete it would take to make a ramp, how much wood it would take to make a railing. We can go ahead and purchase that with the money that we have, put it over in the Quonset and store it until, the next 3 or 4 months when we can get somebody to work on it.
Sure.
When things slow down.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yes.
Did anybody take into the account, Todd, the fixtures not being appropriate sized? Was that part of what the money would be used for?
I think we're going to have to take a really good look at what we can afford to do and how far this money will go. I don't think we'll get all the way there with the modernizing of the facility or just kind of bringing it up to public use, but this will certainly go a long way. And I think it was really generous of them to offer to get us a little bit closer. The way that I feel about it is, we can't be turning away grant funding money when we can utilize it for a project that's has such great community benefit. So we may want to consider, I know we're not going to be meeting again before the end of the month. I know this will get us ADA accessibility and some of those major things to allow occupancy. I'd have to defer to Bill McDougall as far as the building code, if we can operate it with the mini toilets and mini sinks that were in there for the kindergarten kids or whoever, the school children that were in there prior. But my gut would be that even a small toilet and a small sink would suffice to meet code because you're tied into sewer and water. I'm not sure if Lisa Adair is available to speak to that either. But I think this is a great opportunity to put another building up to ADA compliance, which is something we severely lack all around the community.
Part of ADA compliance is toilets and sinks. So that was why I questioned that, because if you're going to have seniors in there, regardless of whether or not they are in a wheelchair or anything else, you need to have 100% compliance in that. That's why I'd asked about the fixtures. So if moving forward with this, that is something that has to be slated. It can't be like, we'll do it later, because that is a requirement. So I have been asked repeatedly, personally, as well as being on the town board. Lois McKenzie has approached me, Sarah, the Quilting Club, Barbara Renounded, you name it. This has been an ongoing want of the community for quite some time. And I really thank you, Carrie, for bringing this up, getting this money, and hopefully this board votes to move forward, because this is excellent. And I think if we need to be compliant, if you guys come up with the rest, and we've got to cough up a little bit to make the toilets and the sinks ADA compliant as well. So this is a usable space for our seniors. I think we should move forward.
And just to chime in, I'm in absolute agreement with what Molly or Trustee Barella just said. If we can do the ramps, and the railings, that's going to be the expensive stuff. If we need to go get adult size toilets and some taller sinks, that stuff is very affordable at Home Depot, and I'm pretty confident with the board's approval, I could find that in my budget.
Thank you, Todd.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I imagine that these updates would be necessary for the library's purposes also, that the ADA updates would be required. So this in no way seems like it's a waste, even though it's for a short term. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, as you mentioned, a very large portion of our community is over 60. I think we need to be spending a lot of time and resources thinking of the aging in place resources. I think this is an awesome stepping stone, and hopefully we can use this time, if this is approved, to figure out a more permanent solution for a senior center and senior resources. Director Bove.
Sure, and I just wanted to state the clarification. The reason we were able to run the food bank out of there is because it was essentially private. It was only the volunteer that was in there. So it wasn't essentially open to the public. It was kind of drive-through because of COVID. And that's how we had kind of skirted around this in the past, is we weren't inviting the public into the space. We were simply letting someone run a volunteer organization out of it. And that's kind of that distinguishing characteristic where we need to be compliant if we're going to open the doors to the community at large.
Other questions?
I love it. I'm so excited. I think this is a great idea. It's just awesome for our community. And I think Linda Davis actually emailed us about this months and months and months ago, and she had a really great vision for that too. And I'm just really pleased that it can work out.
In addition to the motion that we would need to approve the use of the modular for these purposes, do we also need to set up some type of lease agreement? Or is this something that can just be utilized for this purpose without a written agreement in place? I guess that might be a question for our town attorney.
Yeah, I think that would be a question that we can ask our town attorney when they come online.
Was that a question to me?
It was a question to whoever's thought about this. You know, do we need some type of like written lease that says in 18 months?
And I can talk to my supervisor tomorrow on the phone and see what she suggests. But as the voucher coordinator, they basically give me money, which I in turn filter down to the seniors with very few questions asked, but I can get with her.
Okay. And my only other question would be what if any insurance requirements might we have to make sure that it's usable, and that if there were to be some type of accident that people are fully covered?
Right. Well, that is, that's going to be, I don't know whether the town would cover that or whether that's going to be something that I'll have to get donations for. It's going to be a
Director Bove.
Shane, to answer that question, that the town insurance policy is pretty broad, and I believe all we would need would be a certificate of occupancy signed off by the building inspector and the fire inspector. So we would meet the same inspection criteria as any other public occupied building.
Awesome. So do we have a motion to approve the use of the modular for the senior center and support related work?
Should we conditionally approve it until we have the lease? Figure out what the lease should say, or can we just go ahead and approve it? Or if we need a lease, rather? Or can we just approve it?
My opinion would be that we approve the use so that they can get underway with purchasing, and that we give direction to develop whatever additional documents and policies are needed in connection with the operation of it.
Great.
I'd make a motion to approve the use of the red modular for a senior center. And do we need to add that 18-month period, or just leave it at, we approve the use?
Why don't you just say based on the document in front of us?
Yeah.
Based on the document we have in our packet that I lost. It's down here now.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. When you get back to your desk, roll call, please.
I've got it actually
Trustee
right here.
Varela?
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Trustee Burma.
Yes.
Trustee Weber.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And so did the seniors.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Carrie.
Carrie.
Thank you, Director Bo.
Thanks, Todd.
The next item is request for clarification on neighborhood notice requirements for business licensing of outdoor businesses. And we have Mr. Close here, and is this something that town staff would like to frame and then have Mr. Close come up and talk, or should we just have Mr. Close come up?
Mr. Close had brought it to the town staff's attention that that there should have been a process from their perspective that the business licensing should have gone through for an outdoor manufacturing or facility. It's the mill. And he asked me to allow him to speak this evening. And so I allowed Mr. Close to be on the agenda.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your time. Shane, is it all right if I pass these out?
Sure.
Yeah, I can do that.
I don't have enough for everybody.
I'll make sure he's here.
Okay, thank you.
I can share a chest.
Can I sit down and stand? Is that all right?
Sure, we just have to move the microphone, but yeah, please.
Oh, okay. Handicap. I handed out to you, the first page is just a zoning map. The second page, zoning map of the town of Silverton. Second page is the location of the logging mill site here in town. And the third page and fourth page is the city regulations zoning. My name is Doug Close. I live at 1059 Cement here in Silverton. There's a logging lumber mill in the middle of town, surrounded by and next to our homes. 25 feet away from the logging trucks, chainsaws, chainsaw milling, log decks, slash piles, and varmints that live underneath the slash piles. This type of business does not belong adjacent to residential homes. It's illegal according to the city regs. Also, the business moved to that location illegally, and this is why. As you'll notice, the mill is in a little circle that I put on the first page, which is in an ED zone, which is commercially zoned. technically a commercial business can be in an ED zone. The problem is, as the regs state, and I'll go through it here in a second, if it's an outdoor business, there's no structure, no dwelling, et cetera, then it's got to be, the project has to go under review and approved. That business never went through the process, never got approved, never got through city council, didn't get approved at all. Where the business site is zoned ED, as you can see by the handout. The logging milling operation is in the little circle on the map. According to the city's regs, the planning and zoning regulations, chapter 7, paragraph 7-2-12, paragraph C 1, 9, 10, and that's what you have in front of you. It reads that any use or activity not conducted within an enclosed building is subject to review. This process was never done, was never handled. The business just moved to that site. Consequently, that business was north on cement for the construction of a home. When the home was completed, the business just moved down to this location that I have marked on the map. Consequently, the process never went through the legal channels. Also, there is a 200 square foot house, not house, 200 square foot dwelling on the property, I presume an office, I really don't know. I do know there's no bathroom, there's no utilities, there's no water sewer taps at all. And it states in section E4 that I have marked for you also, that the minimum square foot for a dwelling is 500 square feet. Well, there's a dwelling on site, but it's 200 square feet or less. So the business is not following the guidelines of the regulations of the zoning, planning and zoning, even though it didn't even go through the process either. The biggest complaint we have is noise. As early as 7:30 in the morning and as late as 6:30 at night, there's a chainsaw running or there's a chainsaw mill running. Not every day. Sometimes it's 5 days a week, sometimes it's 2 days a week. And by the way, I am all for economic development. This is a great business, that's super. It's just in the wrong location. The second thing with the noise is the log trucks. The log trucks bring in logs for him to mill, for the business to mill. We don't want log trucks in our city streets. And the fourth bullet I have is safety, and that is one of my concerns. The second, number 2, is the safety. The site is a fire hazard, mainly because it's so close to the homes around there. There's a ton of sawdust. There's 2 or 3 slash piles. There's lumber. There's a log deck, a big log deck. And consequently, when you have machinery, it's feasible for sparks, especially with chainsaws, chainsaw milling. As everybody knows, it is dry, dry, dry. To have a spark ignite this sawdust, it wouldn't take much at all. And it could be devastating with all these homes around there. Obviously, personally, my house is catty corner from this site. And under these log decks, there's been developing varmints. We're concerned about the kids playing around, number one, on the log decks, which is the most dangerous thing there is to do, is for kids to climb and run on log decks, which they all love to do. And the second thing is the local dogs chasing the varmints that could have diseases that could pass that on to humans, whatever. The log decks are just the scariest thing there is. And of course, the log drop-offs. The last time the owner of the business had logs dropped off, the logs were left in the road right away for 10 days. During that 10 days, there were 2 kids who live right across the street running up and down on those logs. That is the most scariest thing you can have. is to have anyone, especially a child, running around on these log decks. And eventually, yes, the log decks got moved to the private property, but for over a week, it was in the right of way of the street, of Cement Street. Cosmetically, it's the biggest eyesore in the city limits. The log decks, the slash piles, the machinery, and the sparks and fires. It's just so scary. There's construction trash, and it depends how you look at this. There is no bathroom. There is no utilities. There's no water. There's no sewer. We've seen several of the employees peeing in that location. I don't blame them. I would too. It's just not the right location for this type of business. And one of the last safety issues we have is the logging truck drop off. That can be so scary. Last time the logs were dropped off there, there was no business. There was nobody from the business site to manage the logs when they were put down on the ground. Once again, the deck was there. People were climbing on it. It's just so scary. Once again, this is the wrong location for this type of business. Especially that never went through the process and according to the city regs. We're asking for the city to please immediately. We don't want to put Mr. Meltzer out of business at all. Economic development is some of the biggest advocates we have for this city, as we all know. It's just the wrong location. If anything else, it needs to be put north of town. I'll call it in the industrial park, whatever. That's really all I have to say. My major concern is what I originally said was when this gentleman went into business at this location, it never went through the process, and it never got reviewed, and it was never approved. Yes.
What date did it arrive on that property?
I can't tell you exactly. I will tell you the fall of last year.
Yeah, I was not aware it had moved from its previous location.
Yeah, and good people, good business, good money. I hope they do very well. It's just the wrong location. So I would ask that city council would take it upon themselves to follow up, possibly put a little pressure on somebody in order to have this business just relocated. And I guess that's all I have to say unless anybody has a question.
I have a bunch of questions for town, but I don't at the time have any questions for you.
Understand.
Thank you for bringing this to our
You
attention.
bet. Thank you, people. I appreciate it.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Close before he moves away from the microphone?
I have a question. Do you have any photographs of any of this?
I do.
Because that
That's several on my.
included in our packet.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe they were included in the packet.
Well, thought about it. There's actually 19 people so far that will sign a petition. Along with that petition, we're more than happy to provide pictures. That's why I gave you a map. Hopefully you'll drive by. Hopefully, yes, pictures are worth a million words. Somehow this got through the cracks. It never got through the process. We're just asking you to please do your job.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have a couple of questions for town. Would it be possible to find out what the process was that took place leading up to the business license, when it was issued, whether it did go in front of the planning commission, other things like that? And then also, could you provide clarification to us on how these complaints should be submitted, who the appropriate committee or board is that would take action on this if action is needed?
Yes.
Just because I'm not sure any of us are positive whether it should be us or the planning commission or the zoning board of adjustments or exactly who should be making a decision about this complaint.
Yes, so we'll have a memo for you with the history of this and then anything moving forward. I don't know if Adair's online, if Director Adair's online.
I don't believe that she's able to speak on this particular issue.
Okay.
I have no problem answering questions about this if you like. I am not aware of any permit for this, and I have not received any permit application, and I have never heard of this going before the planning commission. It sounds like it's in the ED zone. I don't have any of the paperwork in front of you. I do see that any use or activity not conducted within an enclosed building is a use subject to review. That requires an application, and those go to the planning commission. Neighbors get notified of those. So I've had no involvement with any permit or project on this site at all.
So I'd recommend that we put together a little investigation and come back with you all with a memo with that information.
Great. Any other requests, direction, comment?
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. The next item is consideration to remove Anthony Edwards from the Citizen State Bank account as a check signer and information only, and to add Administrator Gloria Koschberger. Are there any questions, or do I hear a motion?
Second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barilla,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wegger,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney, Mayor Burton.
Yes. Thank you. The next item we have is consideration to approve the attorney contract. We do have two different contracts in our packet. My understanding is that the difference between the two is one is a flat rate fee structure and the other is hourly. And it's my understanding that we may also have Martha Whitmore and Lane Thomason on the Zoom. And I would like to kick off the discussion by stating one quick thing. I met Lane Thomason, who's an associate at the firm, a number of years ago skiing. We have skied together a few times. I had a conversation about whether or not this is a conflict of interest of any kind with the Colorado Intergovernmental Risk Sharing Agency, which we call CIRSA, as well as the Department of Local Affairs, as well as our town attorney, current, not future. And I was advised that this disclosure stating that I have no business relationship with Lane Thomason, have never had a business relationship with Lane Thomason. I've never spoken about town-related matters with Lane Thomason. And I was not aware that she was part of the firm applying until we received their packet with everyone else. Would clarify any perceived issues based on rumor and innuendo spreading through the town. And I would also distinguish this from a law firm that we rejected based on a conflict of interest that currently serves as general counsel to the Harper family. And
not correct.
Could you clarify that? Because that's how it was presented in the packet that we received in their cover letter, that they served as general counsel to the train, the hotel.
They have in the past served as general counsel to the railroad in the past.
I believe that it was stated differently in our letters, but we can look. But in any event, there was a much more significant, whether former or current business relationship with the firm that we chose to exist or to reject, and no similar conflict exists with this firm. And with that, I'm done talking. So do any of the trustees want to start a discussion or ask questions about the contract or address Ms. Whitmore or Thomason?
The question, I think, for us is which compensation package do we go with? Is that not a big one between the two copies that I have?
Correct. This interrupting is really going to be hard to monitor. Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
And I think we have previously discussed and thought that an hourly option benefits us at this point until stood corrected on this. I was persuaded by the ideas of the board on this issue. I originally had indicated that I would have supported the flat fee, and we've had some really good discussion as a board about that, and I think I understand and would support the hourly contract.
I had two questions for the firm. The first is I believe in the application materials, the proposed flat fee was significantly less than what was put in the proposed contract. And I was curious about understanding the difference. And then the other question is, would there be any type of grace period for becoming familiar with, as you ramp up and become familiar with us, or are you billing right out of the gate from the first moment?
Mayor, I would be happy to respond to that. First of all, as we indicated both in our proposal and during our interview, we're happy to work with the town either on a flat fee or an hourly. There are pros and cons to each one. We do not object to an hourly at all. And it may make sense. One of the things that was difficult in making a proposal, and the flat fee in our proposal was based on truly a guesstimate of how much time the town needs, per month, what the legal services needs are. And so we used that guesstimate in our proposal as an example. In talking with the former town attorney, I think we're not too far off. We adjusted the anticipated hours downward slightly for a little bit lower potential flat fee based on our discussions with Paul, the previous town attorney. So that's why there's a difference. I think it might make sense, honestly, for both of us to try this on an hourly basis until we get 6 months to a year of data that really provides the trustees as well as the firm with some good information about what are the average needs. We understand in doing a flat fee, some months there's more work, some months there's less work, but it averages out. I think right now, neither the trustees nor the firm have a really good handle on what the right average number of hours is. So I think that we should, I support an hourly rate to start out with. We're not going to charge you for some basic, just, getting familiar with the town of Silverton work, but because we have been following the town's meetings and kind of happenings in town, I don't think we have that much ramp up time, to be honest. So we will probably be billing most of the time, but anything that truly isn't beneficial to the town, we will show as a no charge.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other discussion, comments, questions?
There's just a typo here under services, but there's just a repeated bullet point, I believe. But other than that, looked fine.
Trustee Barella.
So for the record, Martha Lane, if Mr. Furman was not sitting as our mayor, you would definitely be my top choice. But I don't want the implications for the future because of the relationship that was had, regardless of Mr. Furman's statement. I think you are both very qualified. I just do not like the fact, the personal, whatever you want to call it, friendship that was created prior. And I will be voting no against the contract, but it's not against either of the two of you. It has to do with the goings on in the background that none of you have seen. So thank you.
Trustee, if I might respond, I totally understand your position. We do not take offense. Please understand that the firm represents the town of Silverton, and that means the Board of Trustees as a whole. We do not represent specific or individual trustees. We represent the board as a whole and the town of Silverton as an entity.
Yep, I realize that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For the public's benefit, I would also say that part of our conversation was around policy, and it was recommended to us that if we followed a policy where in a small town like this, we were never able to work with anyone that any of us had ever met or recreated with in any capacity, we would be extremely limited into whom we could consider hiring for any role for the town. Is there any further discussion, or would someone like to propose a motion?
I would just say I'm for starting with the hourly rate. Seems like it makes a lot more sense, and then reevaluating after. I feel like 6 months is a good chunk of time to reevaluate after that. But that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think we spent plenty of meetings going over this. I'm ready to make a motion to accept the contract for the town attorney based on the hourly wage.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Berlin,
No.
trustee Harper,
No.
trustee Wegger,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Welcome on board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you very much. The way that we normally are able to do this is we'll be signing the contract first thing tomorrow. And then I imagine Administrator Koschberger will be coordinating with you about priorities and questions.
Can't wait to talk to you.
And I'm guessing that Attorney Kosnick is not on this call, but thank you, Attorney Kosnick, for all of your service to the town.
All right, and we will see you another time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is consideration for special event celebration of life for Roy Andrean.
So I'll be presenting. So I received a call a few weeks ago from Patty Andrean. She's been trying to do a celebration of life for her late husband. Unfortunately, COVID happened, restrictions. So working with Roy Perino and Patty Andrean, we did come up with a plan for them to use the gazebo at Memorial Park. They are requesting through the application to host a BYOB liquor license, which that is going through currently. And they are also requesting fee waiver. And I do have a letter from Patty herself. Unfortunately, she is traveling that she asked me to read for you. Dear Mayor and Trustees, my name is Patty Andrean. My family and I are planning to host a celebration of life for Roy Andrean on Saturday, July 31st in the Memorial Park gazebo. Roy was a native here in Silverton. He was very, very well known and deeply loved by this community. We would like to request the fees for renting Memorial Park and gazebo to be waived. We as a family would appreciate this gesture in memory of Roy. Roy loved his friends, Silverton, the community, and nature. We would like to unite and celebrate with everyone as a Silverton family. Thank you in advance, Patty and Andrean. I believe that we have previously had a fee waiver request for celebrations of life for local residents, so I see no problem in saying yes to this.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we should definitely waive the fee for this one, I think, for Roy. He was, yeah, real staple for a long time here.
Trustee Barella.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the fee waiver for Memorial Park gazebo user application for my friend Patty Andrean in celebration of her life, of her husband's life. It's gonna choke me up. I'm sorry. I miss him already. For Roy.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Wegger.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. At the request of Administrator Kochberger, new business item 7 is tabled. Moving on to item 8, consideration to set a work session regarding the RV ordinance.
And I'll just start with this. You also in your packet, the memo that Director Adair had put together for you with options A, B. But I suspect that this might have more discussion. So if we wanted to set a work session for that, that would be my recommendation.
So based on the letters that we received today, I think this is an extreme urgency because people are being displaced now based on something that I can't quite figure out in this code, based on the letters that we received today. I'm proposing that we get to it immediately within the next, I would say within the next few days. I think it's of vital importance because people have nowhere to live here.
Does that work for everyone?
It feels very urgent. I agree.
Friday, the 18th. Anybody have any suggestions on dates?
I will not be here on Friday.
Any others that you can accept? I know you're.
I mean, I got planning commission meeting tomorrow night, Wednesday, Thursday, talking about 3 meetings in 1 week.
Since this is a work session, do we think that all of us need to be present for the work session part, or would like to just attack it so that it can be presented as soon as possible to special meeting for consideration to approve?
Is there anything that you wanted to maybe verbalize now?
Or in an email to Kelly or something? That works. That's allowed.
That's fine. I have nothing to add right now. I really don't.
Is this
discussion going on? I agree that this is an urgent matter, but we all have other things going on in our lives as well. And it's my father's birthday in 2 days and Father's Day weekend, and I'm planning on spending the weekend with him.
Okay, what about Thursday? I mean, not necessarily for you, but just in general.
Wednesday, Thursday, definitely can't.
No, it's gonna be so hard.
I'm on shift for those days, and every time I try and that's a replacement, I get.
Due to the urgency of this, is there a way to, or would the board be comfortable authorizing staff to make one-off decisions that would be applicable only to the immediate future until such time that we could schedule a work session and make this update so that staff can decide to make exception in their discussion, or is that not something we're comfortable with?
I'm not comfortable with that. Read some of these. Did anybody read this staff report from the town board? Seasonal RVs, June the 6th, parcel together or wife is permitted to provide RV on one space. So there's a whole bunch of issues that really need to be addressed immediately. someone cannot park for 20 days on their own vacant land if they're constructing a house because of the, so this needs to be completely addressed. I think a work session.
Okay, and I'm not suggesting that we direct staff to just accept everything. I'm saying that they would use their discretion on a case-by-case basis so that these emergency situations can be dealt with despite our schedules. But I support the board's decision not to do that as well. It's just an idea.
Now, I wonder what kind of position that puts Planner Adair in.
Exactly. Should be a collective decision from the board.
Or would we want to say that we will stay the enforcement of this until we make a decision? So that the people who currently have, like, the letter we received today was that someone's being evicted because of a violation in connection with this. And so we say stay the enforcement of that eviction until, and similar evictions or notices to stop doing something that may be in violation of this until such time that we can address this.
That I agree with.
I agree with that.
Okay. Is that a motion or do we give direction? I think so.
We only have to give direction.
I think that one's just direction.
Okay. So any objection to giving direction to staff to stay the enforcement of violations of this until such time that we can have a work session and then formally adopt a new ordinance?
I think that's a fabulous idea, but we do need to set a work session date.
Absolutely. Planner Director Adair, do you have any objection to that direction to stay the enforcement until such time that we can formally adopt something new?
I don't know of any enforcement actions right now that have anything to do with the RV ordinance. I defer to the decision-making of the board, and I don't have any of the emails or documents that you guys are talking about, so I'm at a loss.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so back to scheduling.
Hey, what is everybody's availability the week of the 21st?
Flexible.
I would prefer earlier rather than later. Both of my kids have birthdays that next week. So 21st or 22nd versus 23rd or, on.
Tuesday, the 22nd. Jess, what time is best for you?
6 or 7 preferably, but I hear earlier is better, so.
Is that something?
I just mean earlier in the week, but.
Oh, I was gonna say, because is that something that you could maybe zoom in from home? If you couldn't actually be here in person? Got that cute little baby?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Tuesday at 7. And 22nd.
Right.
Great. Does that work for you, Planner Adair?
Yes, thank you. I will make it work. That's just fine. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Should Bill Mack be in attendance?
Yes.
Great
Since
question.
He's our code enforcement officer.
Yeah. Is he available on the meeting?
I don't see him.
Okay. Is everyone also available on Tuesday, the 23rd? I'm sorry, on Monday, the 21st, if Tuesday, the 22nd is a conflict for?
I'm not.
No? Okay. Or Wednesday, the 20th, you have a birthday on the 23rd? All right, let's hope he's available on the 22nd. And if there's an issue with that, let's correspond by email.
I believe he's on vacation all this time. So we'll need to check in with him.
He might, yeah.
Is he on vacation currently?
Yes.
Okay. I was gonna say, maybe we can get his input in advance.
Or have him zoom in, but that's not very fair.
Planner Adair?
I just wanted to let you know that Bill McDougal was listening in on this meeting from vacation in Florida for a long time, but it's 2 hours different there. And he's there on a family matter. And I'm sure he will call in for the work session from wherever he is.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Next item on our agenda is discussion about the referendum, the OHV referendum, and ordering more OHV pamphlets.
Nate, you got this one?
So based upon the current referendum timeframes, I have been in contact with the Silverton Standard and Brill, the awesome group over there, and we are requesting that we go ahead and order more OHV maps. The first order that they did has run out. We're at the beginning of summer, so we are requesting 20,000 more maps based off the previous pricing, which was $1,600 per 10,000 maps. As of right now, we are dwindling to very dangerous levels to use paper maps again, which get lost in.
How many did we order on that first run?
The first one was about 2,500 maps.
And we're out of those already?
Correct.
Okay.
Businesses are passing them out daily to visitors as well as the rental companies. Town hall, we have maybe a handful left. And that would need direction from the board to approve more funds.
The request for $3,200.
Correct.
Are there other?
Where are you getting this price? It's not on our.
On page 50 of our packet, there's the price for 10,000 maps is 1,600, and so I just multiplied that by 2.
Oh,
Although would we get another volume discount for 20 since the step up, it's $200 less to go from 5,000 to 10,000. So would there be a further discount going from 10,000 to 20,000?
We're currently researching the more maps that they give, what the pricing would be for bulk ordering. They do believe that it will be cheaper, so we may get a couple more 1,000 maps. But the first maps were ordered before the vote referendum petition was sent out. And currently, like I said, we are dwindling. OHVs are in town, at least for the summer. We want to make sure that we educate as many people as we can to reduce the problems.
And for clarification, is there any possibility that the referendum does not stand? I assume no, but asking just for final clarification.
My understanding, we are currently in a 40-day protest period for sufficiency. And they received more signatures than were required. They only needed 29.15 signatures and they received well over that.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Also, just for clarification, are there other businesses or organizations that contribute financially to the purchasing of these maps, and to what degree or level is that happening?
So the maps themselves previously were paid for in smaller doses based off of the selling of ads, which if you open up the map is the entirety of the bag. They have requested and have gained plenty of those donations, but the town has never put maps, town ordinance and town regulation for the designated route and the subsequent consequences. So they are asking the town to contribute so they don't have to take any money out of anyone else's budgets. And I do believe that it's time for us to step up.
Does the Chamber of Commerce have advertising budget that can be spent on this?
They have already donated their portion of the advertising budget for this.
Do we know how much?
I can get those figures to you, but unfortunately I don't have it right now.
Trustee Rella.
so I'd like to make a motion to accept the printing of 20,000 maps for a bulk rate price, hopefully reduced based on the information that is in front of us. If it's 3,200, it's 3,200. If it's a bulk rate price, we'd appreciate the discount. I don't know how else to say that.
On condition of the discount.
No, because we need them anyway. So we would just truly appreciate the discount, I guess is how I would have to word that. If it's necessary for us to spend all 3,200, but if they can figure out, come on, Jen, Blair, you can do it, figure out how to get a little bit better bulk rate.
I just had one other comment. It's my understanding that the map includes a restatement of the like bullet points in the ordinance relating to rules and regulations, but that the quiet hours were struck from the map.
That is correct. Sheriff Bruce Conrad said that was unenforceable.
So just to clarify, my understanding is that he doesn't feel like he can enforce it as opposed to it being an unenforceable issue. Not allowed to enforce.
It is a current ordinance, and I will not speak to that clarification, but his word was unenforceable and he requested that be struck from the map and the bullet points.
So I would add to the motion that I would support this to the extent that the map reflects the wording of the ordinance.
Yes, much agreed.
And we can talk about this during the OHV continued business as well, because I have a couple ideas of things we can consider to maybe alleviate some of Sheriff Conrad's concerns.
I will speak with Gina Rosado, Blair Tice, Jen Brill, and Emma Schaffer to go over those changes.
But we still would need a second. But modifying, I'm not going to second because I'm not, that's just out of normal, but I would request the modification to have that condition.
So included?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Weger.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Trustee.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Herman.
Yes. Moving along to our consent agenda items, anything that needs to be pulled out and discussed?
I was just wondering what USA Blue Book for 1010 is. I mean, I know what Blue Book is, but.
No, but it's not what you think. It's actually a supply company. And there's 3 different invoices, one for $579.22, $307.72, and $113.16, all occurring in May.
Thank you. Good.
Only because I have the checks. Just saying. It does eliminate a lot of the questions if you have to sign them.
Okay.
Any other questions on the consent agenda?
Oh, I had something, but I'm not gonna worry about it. I don't think it's that significant.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barella.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Weger. Yes. Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Herman.
Yes. Staff reports.
I just have one thing to add to our staff reports, and that is that we have hired a part-time planner. Our part-time assistant planner. And he started on, it was Thursday. So we are going forward with that. Is there any other questions on the staff reports?
I just wanted to say, Gloria, that I designed this little format for them, and if that's something that you redo, I will not be offended. It is useful for me to have that like stuff at the top sometimes to be, you know, it's easy to sort of sweep through them and then come back, but that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. So noted.
I did have one quick question. I saw that in, I believe your staff report, Nate, that Kim Grant had a farmer's market special event application, but didn't make it into the packet.
Correct, that was pulled last minute. Going through the information that she had submitted previously, I found a few missing pieces, so I requested that we put that on the next board meeting, just so we can dot our Ts, or dot our Is and cross our Ts.
And similarly, Director Sites had for immediate trustee consideration mag chloride scheduled for June 9th, which is behind us. I was wondering if there's any consideration related to future mag chloride or anything else like that, or if that was just something to make us aware of.
We'll see if he's on the line.
He does have his hand raised, promoting to panelist. Director Sites, if you unmute yourself, you have the floor.
Muted.
We can hear you.
Yes, that was predated to this report, so yeah, wouldn't be for consideration tonight. But we do still have a second mag chloride scheduled for early August for the request of the trustees and the OHV advisory committee. But that's coming down the pike here in a bit, and I will remind us all again then at that point.
Thank you. Trustee Brella.
John, I have a few questions. I have a big concern brought to me by a lot of community members about the wastewater treatment plant. What is being done? This is a very vital issue. I understand it was turned over as a complaint to the state of Colorado, and we need to be abreast of what is happening.
Well, there have been some complaints ongoing about the smell at the sewer plant. And we're throwing everything we have at it. I'm trying to get some chemicals approved for use at the plant to improve the smell. There's a lot of red tape involved with that process. But a more significant problem that we've had is aeration. We need to get better aeration because our aerators are failing. And we have a grant/loan application that's going into USDA that we're still waiting on an environmental report to be completed. And I've been speaking with the company that we would like to purchase aerators from, and they're willing to rent aerators, rent to own. Basically, they would be willing to supply them, and we could hook them up and get them going, hopefully improve our treatment and smell prior to the grant funding coming through, which may be delayed by months. And then basically we'd be credited for a rental on those aerators towards purchase. And that's the real solution. And for the last couple of years, as the smell increased, my plan was, okay, we're going to get this money and we're going to get these things installed before it goes over the top. But the smell has just been getting worse and worse. So solving problems with wastewater.
I also understand, John, that when we did the tour of the facility, you and I and other trustees and staff, that there was an issue with the pipe coming in as well into the ponds.
That's the step feed pipe.
Yes. Is that still in the same condition as it was then?
In order to replace the step feed pipe, we would have to dredge and drain the lagoon, the first lagoon. And that would cost on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I would just say that our wastewater treatment facility had a lifespan of 25 years. It was installed in 1993. And for the last 6 years since I've been here, I've been working towards the next steps of what we need to repair and replace it. It costs a lot of money. And unfortunately, the main problem that we have right now is the smell, but we're also having problems with meeting effluent limits. So it's at the top of my list right now, and I'm doing everything that I believe that I can do to solve those problems. And I'm willing to take any suggestions. But I have also sought suggestions from the state. I spoke with the state. I have spoken with the state about our issues going back 3 years. And other experts, engineers. It really comes down to money, and it's not a quick fix.
Okay, thank you, John. My next question is for Anthony. You brought to our attention that there was some COVID money that could be able to use on infrastructure like that, sewer, water. How much was it? You brought it up at committee meeting.
So there's, my understanding is it's approximately 150,000. We're getting more information on it. They put out some rules from the feds. I think it's going to be 75 and 75. That doesn't mean that it can't be. It can't help right now, but Administrator Koshberger and I have talked about that, and we're trying to figure out where we can allocate those, understanding all that's going on right now.
Okay, I think those are very vital steps. Many members of our community are reaching out about this, that area too. And I don't know if you noticed the smell.
Smells like dirty diapers to me. I think it's pretty hard not to notice it, but I have faith in our staff that working towards a solution. It's going to be a compromise. It's a lot of tough decisions. You know, where are we going to get this money? If we forego this treatment, then we can have that money in the future for what we want, you know, an actual plant that meets all the requirements. So,
yeah, 2027.
Unfortunately, we're just going to have to deal with it for a little bit. But you ever been around a cow pen?
How much were each of the aerators?
Well, the total cost of the aerators is around $200,000. But to rent them,
I think, John, can you repeat that number again?
the total cost is around 200,000.
And that's for all those that are out?
That's for 9.
Okay, 200,000 for 9. Thank you. $22,000 each. So by adding these aerators, is that going to start to eliminate without having to replace the pipe first? Or are you thinking that the chemical solution is a far better solution to get things started until we can get the pipe fixed?
The chemical solution is a stopgap measure that would cost approximately $5,000. That might help us, might ease the odor and treatment through the summer. The aeration is the best solution. And all of these solutions are, of course, this is a complicated problem because our collection system was started to be installed in 1904, and most of it is still in the ground. That needs to be fixed before we upgrade our plant. And to dig even deeper, our plant will not meet effluent expectations that are going to be coming down the pipe in about 5 to 10 years. So we're really going to have to remodel our plant, but that's going to cost $5 to $10 million. And we don't need that debt service right now. And we're probably going to have to hire someone to run that plant because of the certification required and the amount of effort it's going to take to run that plant. So we don't want to remodel our entire plant right now, and we don't need to necessarily. We want to be able to meet effluent expectations, and we want to be able to reduce the odor. And so we're looking to spend less money now so that we have more down the road when we really need it.
So if I'm not mistaken, we actually have to create a mechanical plant.
We may be able to do an add-on plant, but another advantage of waiting a few years is that these regulations that are coming down the pipe are driving technology. So we may be able to do an add-on to our plant that only costs $2 or $3 million in 7 years, instead of installing a mechanical plant like they have in Durango, which would probably cost $5 to $10 million. What we're talking about here is a very complex problem, and I can do a more extensive report on that in the future. But what I'm trying to do right now is reduce the odor and stay in compliance with the means that we have available to us.
Great, thank you. Thank you for addressing this issue immediately. And I look forward to, I'm assuming it'll be on our next agenda, cost approvals, everything like that, that we need to move forward. Thank you, staff. Thank you for answering my questions, John.
You bet.
What are you doing? You're
Yeah, that was tough. Any other items for staff? No. All right, committee reports. Did we have any committee meetings since our last trustee meeting? Don't believe we did, unless there was a finance or planning commission meeting.
That's tomorrow night.
Okay. Trustee reports.
I kind of did it with John.
I just had a question. I didn't check my mail for too long. And then I checked my mail and there was a note in there about the recall petition for me. And I wondered if we could get some information about like why I'm being recalled and what the process or the timing is on how that works. New territory for me.
I've received a similar note as well.
Okay.
Likewise.
So do you want to take this one, Nathan?
Uh,
Or can we follow up with them?
I would suggest we follow up. We can give you copies of the recall petitions once we receive them. And I believe we are also looking at the timeframes, what that would include for either board or vote. But I will follow up with you tomorrow about those.
And just to clarify, the town did receive them because they certified them.
They are certified. Unfortunately, I don't have them with me right now.
Got it.
The next step after signatures are garnered would be for the town clerk to find them sufficient. As with all petitions from there, unfortunately, I don't want to speak to those because I don't know the process.
Are there any time sensitive issues between the town certifying them and them being turned in with signature? Or is that would be a follow-up question? I don't want to put you on the spot.
I have questions similar in nature, but I think probably once you research the rest of the process, those will all be answered. So I'll just hold until we know more.
And town clerk Freeze will probably have more answers than I will. And I believe she is taking point, although I do have the authority to act in her absence. She is the one taking point, and time sensitivity. I believe there is a pretty good gap before certified before it is found sufficient. But I will get more information to you as I do receive it.
Thank you. Any other trustee reports? All right, continued business. The first item we have is affordable housing. Do we have anything to add to the discussion from earlier this evening?
The only thing, one of the things the last time that was a vacancy tax was asked, there was a article put out. I think it was in the Sun, talked about what they're doing in Crested Butte. They're really trying to push all these types of issues or ideas, I should say. And I'm not so sure that you can do a vacancy tax and how that would be done. I think watching what they're pushing right now is probably going to be what we're going to want to watch, but it may take a while before those things can be a challenge to work out in the court system and everything. But yes.
Is it a violation of Tabor?
I'm thinking, and I haven't read all the thoughts on it, but that's the first thing that came to mind. And I also, there's a second part that I talked to somebody about, and it was, how are you going to police that? I mean, it seems like it's, in theory, it may be, something to explore, but I don't know how you would actually implement. Housing, we heard earlier. The other is OHVs. I've been administering.
Are we done with the housing, affordable housing, continued business discussion?
I had one idea, and I know this is potentially unpopular, but I'll say it anyway. I just wonder about setting up and I think Beth actually sort of referred to this in her presentation. And I think Trustee Bierma has also brought this up over time, but I'd really like us to consider creating a housing committee. And I don't know what that might entail or how we can, and I know it's a lot more meetings, but it just seems like we have great presentations and we have really motivated board to try and solve some of these problems, and we've just got a gap. And I just want to throw out that idea.
In continued business on May 24th, I requested, this is page 60 in our packet, updates on land banking, DOLA, and where we stood with the individuals that had wanted to meet with the town regarding property.
Yeah. The DOLA, when I talked to the DOLA representative after that, they said that they were moving away from that. I think what was, as far as land banking, before you have a project that you can identify, it's putting the money in. I don't know where they are now. This is flipping flop. This is just going and swimming. It seems like what's going on. It's an issue all over the state. One of the things that was mentioned earlier by Beth was that there are a couple of grant programs. I don't know if those are 13 million for the whole state. I would think that they're actually up to 13 million, but I need to go back and look at that the legislature just passed. But we need to figure out what's going on inside of DOLA for that. One of the things that has been the critique of using those DOLA funds, if we are, is that goes back to the issue that Trustee Barella brought up earlier, complexity of, was it AMI?
Yeah, the AMIs.
Yeah, the AMI. So we would be putting ourselves back potentially in an AMI issue. And is that where we want to go? I mean, but my plan is to introduce, there were other things too. There was the flood zone, or not the flood zone, the avalanche zone, and the wetlands issue that they still haven't responded to me on. But I'm going to work with Administrator Koshberger tomorrow and the rest of the time, the rest of the week, trying to facilitate those discussions with Mr. Ashley again.
Okay.
So that kind of leads back to my other question that I'd asked Beth. If you set up, because if you use a housing authority, you're going under federal regulations. It's all, Section 8 and everything else that is compiled upon it. If you actually created a local in-town housing committee, however Sally termed it, can you up the AMI? Can we, or do we have to follow a strict set of guidelines if we're gonna try to form this ourselves?
I think we need to figure out how we have the best of both worlds right now. I think that's what we're coming up with right now, is that there's AMI, the AMI issue that is serving some people, but it's not really serving everybody we need. And we need to figure out how to have an alternative. And I need to just keep talking we do need to keep talking and try to figure that out. I think being able to have an alternative, and that's blocking us. We know we can get the money that puts us in this AMI category, but that's not working for us. I think there's another thing that we have summer locals and winter locals, and then we have year-round locals. And that makes it really hard for some of these programs. They don't understand they're not made for a community like ours. And how do we figure out how we can fit into that issue?
Thank you.
I'm not going to stop trying to work with whoever's working on it.
Well, you were very successful with the others. So thank you, Anthony.
I would remind everyone that we were going to set a work session for housing for the other part. So just throwing that one out there.
Great. Anthony, did you have follow on for OH? Are we done with affordable housing for now? Subject to setting up a work session with San Juan Development. Any other comments? Okay, you were moving on to OHVs?
Sure. So I've been administering the committee. Things have been changing, it seems like daily, on the OHV issue. I think there's been a couple of things brought to my attention. One of them is that maybe we should look at investing on some signs on the side streets with a no or something to keep them from just to make it clear that they shouldn't be going off the path. The other thing is that we don't have a blue line still on Blair. I think is that coming?
I'll address that.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Seitz had asked Mr. Whiff to wait. That's what Tommy told me.
That's right.
Until after the mag chloride and the additional days of watering were completed. That's the only thing I know at the moment.
Thanks. And I was told that a week ago and I forgot all about it. Thanks. Those are the two things that are outstanding that anybody's brought. I think you need to just identify if the OHV committee is going to continue to meet over the summer, who you want to administer that.
And I think it's vital. And thank you both for helping a lot. But we do now need to, I believe, start bringing in players from the county and what the Forest Service has to say and open it up to that broader picture to see, even maybe Lake City. That would be my direction moving forward, because I think we need all of the players there, staging areas, what's happening, where's it going, what's Lake City doing, because that's our closest tie over the hill. That was all suggested previously, but we had to focus on what needed to be done in town first.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you think that we should move toward, there's two things on the table. One of them is who do you want to administer the OHV going forward? The second is the moving from a town really focused to a town county focused OHV committee.
To a larger, yep.
All right.
And involving the feds as well. Getting the representation from BLM and Forest Service.
Okay.
Just adding to that, I have been speaking with Dan Gallegos a lot throughout this process for messaging. She is currently on a committee for the Alpine Loop.
County Task Force.
Yes, and her and I have been communicating when it comes to the OHVs within San Juan County, as well as the town of Silverton limits. So I would definitely recommend speaking with her to get the most up-to-date information. We have done quite a lot on our end, town staff. The website's been updated to include all the PDF maps that if you see all those scan me signs around town, that sends you directly to our website with all the rules, regulations, model traffic codes. It also has the Alpine Loop maps that can be printed as well. And if the OHV working group does go forward, Deanne Gallegos would be a great asset.
Okay. And who wants to serve as point, Nate?
On a 9:46, being interrupted by the noise of OHVs. On a prior agenda, we had addition of parking enforcement officers as an item to be discussed. And then it kind of fell away because I think that was immediately followed by the board's vote to eliminate the route. And so I'm wondering if we can continue the discussion and evaluation of additional parking enforcement officers and traffic enforcement officers to support.
And we had talked about that, started that internally. I'd worked with building inspector McDougal on that, and then it fell by the wayside. So now it's back on the table again, and I need to, he's gone. I can talk to him and see if we can gather up some more information for the next meeting or however this is continued.
Excellent. That was going to be my suggestion too. Thank you for bringing it back up because I think it is vital now. I've witnessed several things that the sheriff doesn't need to be taken care of. It's the simplest thing. Hi, folks, you're off route here. Can we get you to move over here? And everybody smiles and does it when it's done in the right fashion. So I really think this is vital for our community. Good ambassadors. And I love the no signs, please. I think that in itself is vital too.
I'm also curious if we can find data somewhere that can indicate the extent to which parking enforcement officers are can pay for themselves in the form of enforcing fines, or to what extent, like, is there a standard formula where towns think that a parking enforcement or traffic enforcement officer division subsidizes its cost by 40%, 20%, 80% in terms of tickets and things of that nature, and just so that we can understand what is going to come in front of us if there's an ask related to the budget to pay for the hiring of parking or traffic enforcement officers.
Yeah.
And if Sheriff Conrad returns, I wanted to ask for clarification around the enforcement of quiet hours and what his concerns were about. If it was just a human power issue or something else, and whether parking enforcement officers would shift his position on that issue. But we also could have him respond to that later.
Yeah, I had kind of a similar question, maybe, I don't know, for Sheriff Conrad or just for town staff, I'm not sure. I've been getting some questions about the blue line and why it's there and who approved it and what was the process for getting it on the street. And I don't know that it's necessarily a precedent, but just how, you know, we do have a partnership with a citizen in creating the blue line, and hopefully the blue line helps, and that's good, and it marks the route. But I'm just a little unclear about how the process went to get the blue line on the street. We discussed it. It kind of came up at the end of a meeting. I was under the impression, Trustee Barella, that you had spoken with Sheriff Conrad about the blue line and that he was in on that.
No, I came upon Sheriff Conrad and Tommy Whiff in the middle of the street as I was walking back from the hardware store to my home, and the two of them were in the street discussing it together, and they had come up with the location of where they felt it was best delineated. And there has been a group of volunteers that have been helping Tommy Whiff put the line down, and this board approved the paint and accepted the recommendations of the working group.
To put the blue line on this.
Yes.
Well, I definitely support the continued input from the OHV committee. I think this is a live issue with a lot of moving parts, and it's going to be a challenge no matter what. As Trustee Burrell said, we have a people problem. There's a lot of them coming to Silverton, and I think the more people and brains and perspectives we can have providing input on this issue, the better. The big questions I have is there a way to enforce quiet hours? Should we consider increased fines? I know that Sheriff Conrad spoke to that before and was not in favor of that, but I'd like to continue that discussion. And one of my other note, which I think we already covered, was asking that this be done in collaboration with the county to make sure that we don't just drop something on their plate like we just did, and that the efforts are working in unison. Any other OHV?
Yeah, I just think that, I mean, if we're not enforcing noise ordinance for OHVs, I'm gonna have a real hard time enforcing a sawmill noise ordinance down the street. So but as long as we have if we're doing one thing, we need to make sure that we do it for everybody. It's down there creating jobs and helping the economy. The same thing needs to be used for him that we use for everything else. And I've heard a lot of people say that OHV noise isn't a problem. They don't live where I live. Don't hear my windows shaking all day, but we need to do it for everybody that's helping the economy, not just one group. So if we're not going to enforce noise ordinances for one group, then we need to make sure that we don't do it for anybody else.
What is the business noise ordinance? Is it same as OHVs?
There's a noise, I don't want to speak out of turn. I wish I had the book in front of me. My recollection is it's a certain decibel level and that it's a certain time.
Hours of the day.
I don't think it's aimed at any one business user or anything like that. When I read it, but it's been almost 6 weeks, so.
I understand.
Yes.
So are we talking about the OHV noise ordinance? Or are we talking about the town noise ordinance? Because the town noise ordinance says 7 to 7.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then everybody has always been given a pass, let's put it that way, until 10-ish, because that was kind of, shut down quiet time for most places. Now, as to the OHVs, I think it needs to be tried to be enforced. I mean, I don't really see the need for them to be out 7 to 9. That's what the ordinance that Nate brought to our attention says. So I don't know why we can't. I mean, it doesn't seem enforceable, but it is. So just like that, we all just saw the perfect example of what enforcement takes. Hearing it, seeing it, and Sheriff doing his job. So I think it is something that is enforceable. 9 p.m. is most everybody's restaurant kind of closing time, and people are heading back to their prospective campgrounds. So I think that's very reasonable. That's just my opinion.
Great. Any other OHV discussion? Okay. I'd like to ask the board's permission. I forgot something that I did have in my notes for trustee updates. It's brief. May I jump back to just a quick thing?
Sure.
I'd like to publicly apologize to the candidates for administrator that did not get considered as a result of us not having an appropriate process to make sure that every email was cross-checked among the 3 people that were addressed on the emails. It's unprofessional, and I'm sorry that that happened. And I hold myself to a higher standard than that. And I'm sorry to those candidates.
Thanks.
All right, at this time, we'll move to our closing public comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in duration. We only have one member of the public that's made it through the whole meeting. If you'd like to speak, you're welcome to now. If not, we'll move to the virtual attendees.
Well.
Yep.
Just remember that we as the public, are watching very closely. You folks, not to be condemning, not to be arrogant, but we have decided that we're going to watch very, very closely what happens at these town hall meetings. Even if it's just me here now, I may go back to several other people and report to what I've heard, hopefully be a good report. Just remember, I know you all do remember, you're working for the public. You're working for the citizens of Silverton. Please keep that in mind. Please keep that in mind. Keep business in mind. Everybody says OHV, OHV. That's only part of it. There is proven facts, you believe it or not, that the OHVs bring extra business to town. And if you want to check those facts, I know people you can talk to. So please remember that you're going to vote your conscience. That's just what we should do. We elected you to do that. But please remember, the citizens are watching and listening. Thank you.
Thank you. And for those not in the room, that was a comment by resident Mike Gariak.
Who?
Mike Gariak.
Yes.
Thank you. So now moving to virtual attendees. I see that we have a hand raised.
Melody Skinner, you have the floor.
I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Mike, I understand that you wanted to say what you did to the board, but I've been at every single meeting for quite a while, and they're easy to get to online and they're recorded. And we don't necessarily have to tell everybody else in town what goes on here. We just need to tell them to go watch the meeting and see what happened. And to everybody that's in the meeting tonight, it's been a tough meeting. You've all maintained a very good manner about you, and I appreciate that. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Melody.
Blake Campbell, you have the floor.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
My family owns in the county, and I appreciate the work you guys have been doing. I've been watching these because this is fun, entertaining, and great stuff. I'd like to thank the mayor, and you guys are awesome. I did have a question, though. I don't know if this is time for questions. Do we know how many housing units we are looking to add to the town and county for affordable housing? Are we talking 10, 20, 30? Are we talking 100?
I will note that we don't typically do Q&A during public meetings, but referring back to Beth Kremer's presentation, it sounds like they're getting a housing study to be done, which would answer your question.
And by July, I think she said.
I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any further public comment at this time, so we'll close public comment and adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great night. Our next meeting is on June 28th, subject to potentially scheduling a meeting next week.
Excellent.
All right, good night, everyone. Thank you.